Hey guys, I am Ibigandscary. I'm bringing you another StarCraft 2 replay, this time featuring in our top left-hand side forsakeNXE, our red Terran, and in the bottom right, his opponent is Aocowns. I don't know. Cones, our blue Zerg. Both players are in Masters. We're on Alkaline Wastes, and it is a Zerg versus Terran. It's a very fun matchup. I like this matchup. Usually whenever the names are pronounceable, but this is probably an incredibly common Dutch word, and I just have absolutely no idea what it is. But you know what I do know is Terran versus Zerg, and it's a glorious matchup. First supply depot going down from Forsake, first Overlord being built from Aocowns, so both players deciding not to cheese right away at least. No early SCV, no early drone being pulled off. Everyone's progressing down the traditional pathway. I like Alkaline Waste just because the natural and the third are so incredibly close, and then you have all the different little doodads that they've added into Heart of the Swarm. You have the rocks, you've got the other rocks, and you've got still the other rocks. So it's always a good time to be had there. And Cones is actually being kind of cautious here, scouting off the traditional locations for any proxy harassment or anything like that. I guess checking down in the bottom left-hand corner for seeing if there is something proxy. I don't really know what you do against Zerg if you're Terran proxy besides just a handful of Raxes. I don't know why you just check down here, because usually the Raxes are positioned right around here if you're going to try for some proxy shenanigans. Speaking of shenanigans, this is a really clever positioning of the barracks right here. The drone's going to waltz right past this supply depot, and with the supply depot positioned here, it's not going to hug the wall. It's going to hug pretty much the center, and this is just going to be outside of his range of view, and because of that, he's going to come in, see no barracks, see early gas, and he's going to believe that he just missed the proxy. Think of it up top, but with some proper scouting, maybe he'll check to the bottom right hand side, and maybe he'll, oh my goodness, that is so incredibly close to the barracks. Oh no, he got it. He got it. Good for him. He was so very close to not seeing it at all. But now seeing the barracks, he's going to know that the Reaper that's going to be popping out, he knows it's a Reaper because of the refinery. He knows that Reaper is going to be popping out from the home base, and he has enough time to get up that hatchery back at home, especially with the spawning pool already on its way, both of which are going to be popping at pretty much the exact same time. Cones actually has enough money that he's going to be able to start both of those queens simultaneously, but it remains to be seen if he'll actually do that. It might be better for him to produce a couple of Zerglings to deal with the Reaper harass. Personally, I'd go for the double queens. It's always more convenient to have something ranged to fight those Reapers, but every person has their own style of play, and maybe he wants to be aggressive too and get out some of those Zerglings. Spawning pool is up. Gas has been started. We see first queen is on the production tab, electing to spend that money down on a handful of Zerglings instead. First Reapers coming out from Forsake. It's going to be hitting with 0 saturation down the natural. He's going to have to mosey up into the main, and there he'll be greeted by a second queen. All right, second queen on the hatchery. I guess since the hatchery had just finished, Aocowns was spending down his money on the extractor and also pulling some of that stuff. A couple of Zerglings are done, but with no creep spread, Forsake's going to be able to micro back the Reaper with just minimal damage being taken to it. First queen pops out back at the main. Yep, immediately hitting that larva, but the second Reaper is going to be arriving for Forsake, and back at home, he's getting up a nice infrastructure. I don't know what he's progressing towards. It could be a 1-1-1. He's got that reactor being constructed on the barracks, which tells me he's probably going to be throwing in a starport sooner or later to use that. Oh no, the factory's going to be using that. For some reason, I thought the factory was already done. Queen going to town on those Reapers, just going a little bit of back and forth, but most importantly, Forsake has not been able to kill any workers. Every single one of these Zerglings that dies, Cones is going to be perfectly fine with, because that's one drone that those Reapers could have killed, and that's just a loss that he's not willing to take. Very important for that creep spread to be going on, and very important to stay on top of the larva inject. So a third queen pops out. These Reapers have been positively rebuffed, not really accomplishing anything except for a really nice scout on the interior of the base, seeing that the extractor no longer has any gas mining. Going once again for that gas timing to see if there is good saturation here, if the gas geysers have been double tapped. Metabolic boost well over halfway done. It looks like the natural has been taken by Forsaken. He's producing another command center somewhere in the bottom left hand side of his base, and one of the Reapers straggles back home. I think the other Reaper died. Oh no, he was just being ballsy. Oh my goodness, 8 hit points. But will he get away from this queen in the bottom left hand corner? Forsake using a really nice abuse of the terrain there, dropping it down to the third, and he's going to be running back. But with their ability to regenerate, maybe we'll see those Reapers play in later on. Really can't be understated how very powerful it is to have that mid scouting potential from those Reapers later on. STEM being researched at the tech lab, the reactor from the factories that I misspoke about earlier, producing 2 Hellions at a time. And it looks like Forsake is just going to sit back and rely on the dual Hellion and reactor harassment to keep the Zerg in check. And what can Cones do? I mean, Cone has double tapped that gas. He's getting the second one at the main and the third down at the natural. Probably the fourth in a second. Okay, there goes the fourth. Fantastic. Now that he's got up a third, he's throwing down the Roach Warren, as well as 2 Evo chambers. Maybe, where are those Evo chambers? Okay, good. More for a choke than anything else. I don't think he's intending on spending all that gas on the dual Evo chambers for dual upgrades. If he is, then we're going to expect any sort of harassment from him is going to be severely stunted in the foreseeable future. Hellions and Reapers really can't kill a hatchery very successfully. However, you give them enough time, and they definitely will. +1/+1 immediately getting started. So it looks like Cones is going to be waiting just a little bit longer before he actually wants to do some aggression. Cones is doing some nice positioning of the Queen up on the high ground, flushing the Hellions out of their choke, but no, Forsake using the train for his own. Poor Cones, forced to engage in that narrow choke where the Hellions can just do so much splash damage, really just paying for themselves instantly, cutting to pieces all of those Zerglings, killing the Queen too, and poor Cones really... man, that's got to be incredibly frustrating. Fortunately, another Queen has been rallied up to the top right-hand side to meet up with that third, and another Queen finally finishes to defend that hatchery. But man, more than half of its health was cut down to pieces by a handful of Hellions, and you switch over to the Resources Lost tab, that really went in the favor of Forsake. Some nice harassment there, but once again, you switch over to the Workers Killed tab, absolutely zero. So the economy from Zerg hasn't really been stunted. It's been a little bit held back just because there's no saturation at that third because of the harassment, but not nearly as much as if those Reapers had managed to get a couple of drone kills if they had forced out more Zerglings than were necessary. And yeah, there are a handful of Zerglings on the field, 30 of them, but that's just going to be poking some pressure at the front. More importantly, checking out the third to make sure that that hasn't been taken. Really tight wall off back at home, so Forsake's not going to be having to worry about that. He's going to be sitting back and just relaxing, trying to get up all those upgrades. He's got +1/+1 on the way and combat shields. 1/1 is almost done for the Zerg, so I think Cones is going to be thinking about pushing out with some aggression. Remember, he already has that Roach Warren up. That seemed to be a little bit more of a defensive Roach Warren, something that if he was dealing with an all-in from the Terran, then he could throw out a couple of those Roaches. Instead, he's getting the +1 melee, which tells me he's probably going to be taking towards Ultralisk, which, I mean, who isn't if you're Zerg nowadays? But he's going to be doing that by way of Spire. So the harassment potential will be coming from the Zerglings and Banelings initially, and then he's going to transition over to those Mutalisks, and we'll be doing quite a lot of harassment there, followed by the Ultralisks, which is really when the hammer's going to drop. He just wants to keep Terran in check, maybe shut down the third once it comes out. He's got a nice Zergling positioning there, so he's going to know exactly when Forsake decides to take that out, and with the destructible debris now taking fire from the Marines and Hellions, fire, get it? He's going to know exactly when that third decides to go up, starting immediately on the +2/+2. Carapace, oh, pneumatized Carapace. I like it. I like it. Just maybe increasing the longevity of those Overlords, or it could be that we're going to see some Bane Rain later on. Probably, in all honesty, just to keep those Overlords alive for a little bit longer. He's probably going to have to be dealing with 1 or 2 Vikings that are going to be coming out and dealing just a little bit of damage to those Overlords. That can be a pesky thing, and if you have Overlord speed, you can definitely keep them alive for a significantly longer amount of time. 5 Mutalisks on the production tab, concussion shells coming out for Forsake, so I think he's just going to be waiting for +2/+2. He has the infrastructure up at home, and he's got quite a lot of tech on the way. Ooh, even an armory, but what is he going to be doing out of that? I don't think he's been researching anything, and I don't think he's producing anything that necessitates an armory upgrade. Maybe he's thinking about a Hellbat drop later on, but frankly, with the Mutalisks now out on the field, the drop potential is going to be severely stunted from Forsake. Infestor Pit being thrown down, but that's more for Hive than anything else. I think he might throw in a handful of Infestors just to deal with this right here, but I don't think we're going to be seeing anything else coming out of the Infestor Pit. If you get my meaning. So many Mutalisks already out on the field, and that's going to be making Forsake feel a little bit nervous, splitting up his Marines, but you really don't want to push this deep onto creep. Oh, a couple of Banelings have already been morphed out. There goes the surround. This is exactly why you don't want to push so deeply into creep. Even when supported by the Medivacs, there's absolutely nothing they can do, and the Mutalisks sweep in from the north side just to start doing a little bit of damage to those Medivacs. They boost away, but not fast enough. One of them gets cut down, but the Marines supporting them manage to take an eye for an eye, and a Mutalisk does indeed go down. The creep spread is absolutely monstrous coming out of Cones, and Forsake is pushing back, this time Stutter stepping away, but here comes the flight of all those Zerglings. Two Banelings are in tow, but with the creep finally cutting off right there, it looks like Forsake's escaping with the majority of his Marines in one piece. Got to be careful with these two Widow Mines there. Man, I can't even see him, and I have this omnipotent power. How many? 31 kills? The other one with 0. Look at this saturation. Forsake's economy is absolutely booming on 3 bases, but the Zerg now has 4, and this one's pretty much just a pure gas refinery at this point. You can see how starved Cone actually is on all that gas, but Hive is almost done. He's only producing 1 or 2 Mutalisks at a time. He's got that Pathogen Glands coming up, so we're going to see a couple of Infestors thrown into the mix to support those Ultralisks once they get out on the field. But expect an Ultralisk Cavern to be thrown down in just a couple of seconds. Quite a lot of minerals left over, but I don't know if Cones wants to waste all that supply on Zerglings just to spin down all that money. I mean, I guess he does. He just did exactly that. 8 Banelings on the production tab right now, quite a lot already mixed in with all these Zerglings, and man, Forsake once again pushing really, really deep into that creep. But what are you going to do? I mean, what else can you do? You can't wait for the creep to recede whenever it's more than half of the map in and of itself, but the Ultralisk Cavern has been thrown down, so Forsake is running out of time to keep this aggression up. I mean, once those Ultralisks get out, everything's going to be on pretty much even footings. I feel like Forsake right now has the superior unit composition when it goes toe-to-toe in an even fight, but once those Ultralisks come up, even with +3/+3 on the way for Forsake, he's going to be in a lot of trouble. And I think he knows that, which is why he's being so incredibly aggressive with this. I would love to see a couple of drops to keep this economy in check. I mean, with 4 bases up, a 5th base built but not saturated, because he quite frankly doesn't need the extra income right now. Cones is about to be hitting his stride completely with +3/+3 started. We're probably going to see Carapace started. There goes the Banelings once again. Not a full surround because of the small stutter stepping coming out of Forsake, but there goes the hop pickup, keeping alive maybe a quarter of his Marines and retreating back to a Widow Mine. This one with 16 kills. The Mutalisks being super shy and bashful because they really can't do anything without detection. Wow, 22 kills, 14 kills. That is just so incredible. But not many Marines left, so Forsake's going to have to sit back, relax, and re-macro up. He's got 13 Marines on the production tab right now. Remember, he constructed Marauders slow, but we haven't seen any Marauders thrown out. Expect that to change once we see the Ultralisks starting to hit the ground. Marauders do, some significant damage and definitely come in more handy considering how much splash damage the Ultralisks can do. Speaking of Ultralisks, we have 3 on the production tab. Chitinous plating underway. More Banelings being produced, and I think that is an absolutely fantastic decision because Forsake really hasn't shown that he's capable of dealing with the constant flood of Zerglings and Banelings coming out of Cones. However, I don't think he's going to be able to stop this 4th, 5th, 6th, whatever number in the top right-hand side going down. 2 different drops dropping in the exact same base. Quite a lot of damage. A little bit of a run by with all of his Mutalisks trying to repair the Medivac, but the Banelings get a complete surround and the Ultralisks come in and mop everything else. More than a handful of Banelings are left alive. Oh, but the Mutalisks, oh my goodness, arriving just in time to see a genocide of all the Mutalisks from so many Widow Mines, each one of them with more than a handful of kills. This missile turret was 7 Mutalisk kills, and all of a sudden Cones just does not have the harassment potential offered by those Mutalisks. He just doesn't have it anymore, and so he's going to have to be relying upon this far less and more stationary force. Look at that, just so many kills, and he had detection too. I mean, you've got to know that these Widow Mines are absolutely all over the place. 32 more Zerglings on the production tab, a greater Spire coming up, but what is he going to use that for? Corruptors to deal with this flight of Widow Mines, or is he going to be transitioning over to Broodlords because his ground force really isn't doing it for him? Forsake dropping in the bottom left-hand side, doing a little bit of damage to the hatchery, but more importantly, cutting to ribbons all those workers. Now we can see the workers kill tab in the favor of Forsake with 18 workers killed, fully maxed out right now. Forsake has been incredibly cost-effective in his earlier engagements. Obviously, the Banelings and the Zerglings have been doing quite a lot of damage to him. However, there were just Marines that he was losing, and that's just as easy to re-macro Marines as it is to re-macro Zerglings. And end result is, if you're being as cost-effective as Forsake is, when you're taking out bases with a handful of Marines and medevacs, then yeah, you can afford to re-macro like that. You can afford to have a bank so massively huge, because throwing down 7 barracks back at home just in case he decides to lose his entire army, which is what's going on right here. Losing a majority of his army, but still pulling back, even though half of his army was cut to shreds, immediately re-macroing, 10 more Marines on the production tab, 3 more Marauders, transitioning over to those Marauders that I was talking about. And remember, these Marauders have +3/+3, so their armor is definitely tanky, really not going to be taking a significant amount of damage from the Zerglings and Banelings, which is what Forsake has been relying on. And with only 3 Ultralisks on the field, 2 more on the production tab, Aocowns is definitely going to be having a outmodded unit composition in a relatively short amount of time. Fortunate for him, the medevac that was full of units got crushed down, and now we had a single medevac with only 2 Marines inside, forced to do quite a lot of damage. Rather forced to take quite a lot of damage. +1 armor for Zerg flying units on the production tab for Cones, but at this point, Forsake has been maxed out for so long. He's got a massive bank. I think he's going to be kicking this aggression into overdrive, but every time he pushes out, he only pushes out with about a quarter of his army. The rest of it is spread out. It's remacroing back at home. It's striking down at the hatchery in the bottom left-hand side, but now with so many static defenses positioned there, Cones just really wants to buy enough time to max out fully with his Ultralisks, and I guess now Corruptors and Broodlords because of that Greater Spire back at home. Cones just wanted to max out. He just wants to sit back and relax and play a macro game, but Forsake's really not giving him breathing room. 10 more Corruptors on the production field. Even if he leaves those as Corruptors and just cuts down all these medevacs, that'd be a huge win for him. I mean, look at so many medevacs. You can really judge a Terran player on his the caliber of play based purely on how well he keeps his medevacs alive. Remember, he had to deal with infestors earlier. Pathogen glands was researched. He could have been dealing with those infested Terrans, but we haven't seen that. We've seen a reliance on Banelings and other ground units. Here comes the infestors, throwing out a fungal growth, definitely not whiffing it, taking 3 of them down. Probably one of them might maybe escape. Another drop going off into the top right-hand side. I'm going to leave that first medevac selected. It looks like he did indeed escape. 2 more medevacs escaping, even though the ground forces were cut to pieces for the first time in forever, it seems. Forsake is not 100% maxed out, but expect that to change. Man, those Widow Mines are just doing a number. And look at this spread. This is so incredible. Look, it's like a, what is that called? The Migiotti line, the one in France during World War II, is incredibly effective at just keeping these Zerglings and Banelings in check, because it would be so easy to run in a swath of Banelings and just detonate in this middle line, and that would be it. But unfortunately for him, Cones really hasn't been afforded that luxury, and he's not really relying on his Ultralisks to push forward and tank those mine strikes so that he can run by those Zerglings. Once again, a small poke coming in from Cones, but he's nowhere near maxed out. He's continually losing bases, and he's just desperately trying to keep his economy in check. So Forsake really has a handle on this. I guess it's forsakeNXE. There goes a nice fungal growth down on a cluster of units. However, they survived just long enough to hop up inside the medevacs, and the infestors weren't close enough to throw down another fungal growth on top of them. Top right-hand side of Planetary Fortress, only mining with mules. Very wise decision there, as these Ultralisks and Zerglings are still a very impressive sight to behold, but the Planetary Fortress can usually hold its own against them, especially when supported by so many mines, and only whenever it's repaired, though. Man, look how fast it falls down whenever it's not repaired. Oh my goodness, so many Ultralisks pushing in, but the Ultralisks are all in the red and orange and are going to begin to melt away as the Marines and Marauders and Mines just do their number. Broodlords, though, wow, so many Broodlords just to the south of the bottom left, middle left, fourth station for Forsaken. The Broodlords definitely going to be doing quite a lot of damage to the infrastructure, but when not supported by Corruptors, the Broodlords are beginning to get shelled down by the Vikings, as well as a small counterstrike of the Marines, forcing them to pick up, though, the Broodlords shelling down so many of their Broodlings, finally turning back to the infrastructure. But with the 2 Vikings completely unattested, it's going to be doing a significant amount of damage to the Broodlords. We only have a handful remaining alive. Both players are really focused on the engagement in this area, but with Vikings coming from either side and a plunge plenty of Marines coming in from the south, I think. Oh no, nice fungal growth thrown down here by Aocowns, but 134 over 190 supply from Forsaken, and Forsaken is finally blown through all that mineral reserve that he's acquired throughout the majority of the game. Only 5 Ultralisks remain, no, 2 Ultralisks remaining, 5 Broodlords remaining, and supported by a handful of Infestors beneath. It's only a matter of time before Forsaken manages to finally crack this. The first Ultralisk goes down, the second one is only in half health. The Marines, though, have been completely cut down, but at the sacrificing themselves to cut down all the Infestors, leaving the Vikings completely free to deal with all of these Broodlords. Oh my goodness. Cones finally tapping out, but that was because Forsaken suicided in the majority of his forces just to take out all of those Infestors, which were really the only anti-air. I think that was the major weakness in this. Broodlords are still very good. Ultralisks are still very good. Obviously, the MVP are these guys right here, just doing so much damage just over time. Absolutely ridiculous. We switch over to the resources lost tab and just show you that it was basically 100. It was a 1 to 1.5 ratio of resources lost, and then the drops that Forsaken was throwing down just constantly left and right. This number actually is a little bit slanted because Forsaken, as he was getting supply blocked, began to sacrifice a lot of his SCVs. He would mix them in to the units that he was throwing down here into the creep early on. I didn't mention it, but I noticed it, and it was because he was 100% supply blocked. Needed that little extra supply to get out a couple more Marauders, maybe a handful of Marines, a handful of Vikings, more than anything else. Aocowns has fantastic macro ability, but it's oh so hard to deal with a Terran that knows how to drop, especially whenever the spread from all of these mines is this intimidating, because usually the answer back to that is small little counter strikes of your own. Throw in a couple of Zerglings, keep them back on their toes, give yourself some breathing room. And I feel like Cones just never had a breathing room for him, and that's just because Forsake's good. It's not because Cones is bad. I wish I knew how to pronounce his name. I feel bad. Forsaken, yeah, he's good. Really good at doing drops, really good at macroing up. He knew exactly when he wanted to win. He wanted to win whenever he got that +2, maybe that +3. He wanted to push out then and start doing damage. I feel like the creep spread was absolutely ridiculous from Cones, and whenever you have so many Hellions and Reapers early on, that's maybe something that you could think about. It's pretty easy to throw down a scan whenever you're pushing out with those guys, just to keep that creep in check. It's good to deal some damage back at home. It's really nice to scout the third and deal some damage to the mineral line when it's there, but instead of focusing down the hatchery, maybe it would have been worthwhile to push back. And I feel like some of the engagements with the Broodlords, the Banelings and the Marines was a little bit cost inefficient for the Terran because that creep spread was so good. At least it contributed. I don't know. If you guys have a comment, you could leave a comment. If you have a game you want me to cast, you could PM me here or on Reddit. One way or another, I will see you guys later. I am Ibigandscary.